crown believed to be eternal, a king who claimed the voice of God, and a nation that answered with steel. In the shadowed halls of 17th century England, power was not earned. It was inherited, sanctified. Untouchable. Kings were not questioned. They were obeyed. In 1625, fate placed the crown upon Charles Stuart, not the chosen heir, not the expected king, but the one who survived. From childhood, Charles lived in the shadow of his elder brother, smaller, quieter, often ignored. When his brother died suddenly, destiny changed course. A boy once overlooked now carried the weight of 3 kingdoms. Charles was quiet, reserved, deeply religious. He believed suffering was a test from God, and authority was a gift from him. From the moment the crown touched his head, Charles believed one truth above all others: a king did not answer to men, and that belief would follow him into conflict, into war, and finally into death. A king chosen by God, a crown heavy with pride, and a silence so final it ends beneath an executioner's blade. In the cold halls of 17th century England, power did not rise from the people. It flowed through bloodlines and through belief. England was changing. Trade was growing. Ideas were spreading. People wanted a voice, but Charles looked backward, not forward. In his world, Parliament existed to serve the crown, not to challenge it. Charles ruled in a fragile balance. Parliament controlled money. The king controlled authority. Neither trusted the other. Charles demanded loyalty. Parliament demanded accountability. Both believed they were right, and neither would bend. Charles married Henrietta Maria of France, a Catholic princess in a Protestant nation. To Charles, it was love. To England, it was fear. Church bells rang with suspicion. Pamphlets spread rumors. People whispered of Catholic plots and foreign influence. Charles dismissed these fears. To him, opposition was not concern. It was defiance. When Parliament questioned his spending, his advisors, his religious policies, Charles responded with anger. He dissolved Parliament again and again. Each dissolution widened the divide. Each silence grew heavier. In 1629, Charles made a decision that would define his reign forever. He would rule without Parliament. For 11 long years, England lived under the will of one man. No debate, no consent, only command. Without Parliament's approval, Charles needed money. So he searched the past for forgotten laws and turned them into weapons, fines, forced loans, and ancient taxes revived. One tax ignited fury across the kingdom. Ship money, a tax meant for coastal defense during wartime, now demanded from farmers, merchants, and towns far from the sea. In peace, the people paid, but they did not forget. Resentment grew quietly, like a storm waiting to break. Religion became another battlefield. Charles demanded order, uniform worship, strict ceremony. Altars were rebuilt, rituals enforced. Silence demanded. Too many Protestants, it felt like betrayal. They stepped back toward Catholic rule. Puritans resisted. Sermons grew defiant. Churches divided. In Scotland, resistance turned into rebellion. When Charles attempted to impose his religious system there, Scotland rose against him. War erupted. But wars cost money, and money required Parliament. In 1640, Charles summoned Parliament once more, believing fear would bring obedience. He was wrong. This Parliament demanded limits on royal power, punishment for royal advisors, protection of rights. Charles felt surrounded, threatened, humiliated. In desperation, he crossed a line no king had crossed before. He entered Parliament with armed guards to arrest 5 members. They escaped, but the message was clear. The king had become the enemy of the law. Trust shattered, fear spread, and England moved toward disaster. In 1642, the nation broke apart. Civil war, cities chose sides, families divided, neighbors became enemies. Royalists stood for tradition, crown, and church. Parliamentarians stood for reform, law, and representation. Charles raised his banner, convinced God would grant him victory. But faith alone does not win wars. Parliament organized, trained, adapted. From this chaos emerged a new force, the new model. Army, disciplined, united, driven by belief rather than birth. Led by Oliver Cromwell, battle after battle, the king's advantage faded. Supplies vanished. Allies weakened. In 1646, Charles surrendered, a king, once absolute, now a prisoner. Yet even in captivity, Charles believed fate would save him. He negotiated in secret, promised reforms he did not intend to keep, sought foreign support, His indecision reignited conflict. Another war followed. This time, Parliament's patience ended. They no longer saw a misguided king. They saw a danger to peace. In an act without precedent, Charles I was placed on trial, accused of treason against his own people, a king judged by subjects, a crowd stripped of divinity. Charles refused to recognize the court, refused to plead, refused to bow, but history moved forward without him. The verdict was inevitable. On a cold January morning in 1649, Charles I stepped onto the scaffold. The crowd was silent. He spoke calmly, with dignity, still believing his authority eternal. Moments later, the blade fell. With it fell the illusion of absolute monarchy. For the first time in history, England executed its king. Charles I did not lose his throne in a single moment, but through pride, isolation, and refusal to change. His death reshaped power forever, because after Charles I, no English king would ever rule alone again.